Well, hello and welcome to the Terri Cole Show. I am so excited for you to enjoy this interview that I am sharing with you with my friend Elizabeth Earnshaw. She has a brand new book coming out called I Want This to Work. And it's all about, you can read it if you're single, you can read it if you are a couple, you can read it with your person, but it's all about really the most complicated situations we find ourselves in our romantic relationships and what to do. So there's a guide, there's different steps that you can take. I love her work. I first got turned on to Liz on Instagram. Her stuff was just so good. And then I invited her to be a guest in my Boundary Boss Next Gen. We did a live thing for sort of Gen X and Gen Z people. And she was in that because she's sort of in a younger category. And she just added so much value. And when I found out that she had a book coming out, I was like, amazing. So I think that you will really find some interesting information in this episode. Her book is available for pre-order right now. Go to Amazon and you can find her at elizabethernshaw.com. I hope you love this interview. Drop me your comments. Let me know what your thoughts are when you're done listening to it. All right. I want to start by saying congratulations on your brand new book, Elizabeth. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you so much. It's so exciting for it to finally, I know you understand this, for it to finally be like finished and out in the world.
Yeah. I mean, how was it for you though? Were you writing? I mean, you clearly must have been writing during the pandemic.
Yeah, that was the bulk of writing. Were you writing during the pandemic too?
I was.
Yeah.
It was a thing.
It was a thing, I do wonder what it would be like to do it not during the pandemic.
I think there were pros and cons personally of writing it during a pandemic because I was pretty locked down. So you're like, well, what else am I going to do?
Totally. I mean, the pro was that I wasn't driving all over the place. Like before, my life was out of control with driving, like to daycare, to work, all of that stuff. I think the hard part was my 4-year-old was a 3-year-old and he was home all of the time. And so there wasn't like a lot of time just to be quiet. If I wasn't meeting with clients, I was with him. And so I was writing at like 2 a.m. when the rest of the house was quiet.
Wow. Well, it's super duper exciting.
Yeah.
Name of the book, I Want This to Work, an inclusive guide to navigating the most difficult relationship issues we face in the modern age. That is coming out in a couple of days. So everyone pre-order it right now. You can pre-order, just go to Amazon and pre-order. It is a really important, pre-orders are really important for young authors. I know this firsthand. So please go do that. What I really wanted to ask you is, what is your personal sort of backstory? And how did that influence your decision to become a relational expert and a couples therapist? And I know you own, you have other therapists working under you and you've got lots of businesses happening, but what was that origin story?
It's a good question. So I was always fascinated with relationships. When I was really young, all I wanted to do was play with dolls. And I really paid attention to like, what are people talking about and what are they doing? And I grew up with a lot of conflict around me, which would kind of make sense that I was interested in it, right? And so I saw a lot, especially in extended family, of like, cutoffs, like very unnecessary, you're not invited to Thanksgiving anymore type of cutoff, and arguments and criticism and just so much stuff that was just really unnecessary. And I remember thinking as a young, like really little, like maybe first grade, like people don't need to act this way. Like what is happening? Why is my cousin not allowed at Thanksgiving because you disagree with like one thing she did 2 years ago? Like what is happening here? Can you talk to each other or like let things just go under the bridge a little bit? Do we have to live this way? And so I remember always being very fascinated with and also very focused on how I was not going to do that myself. And what was I going to do in my friendships to make sure that those relationships felt good and valuable and not so kind of chaotic and crazy all of the time, which is what I had around me. And then I ended up being in really terrible romantic relationships anyway, where they were just horrible. Like, there'd be cheating and I would stay with people who were mean to me and all sorts of things. And I thought I was going to be a teacher, went to school to be a teacher. I was terrible with that. And I was driving down the highway one day and I saw this big billboard that said, join a couples therapy program. And I thought, oh, that's what I should do. I think I would like that. And so I applied, I went to school, the rest is history, but having that opportunity really helped me to kind of bridge everything that I was fascinated with when I was young and that I wanted with knowing what to do, which is something that no matter how much I wanted to pretend like I knew better than the adults, I was still acting like them. And so that's kind of the story of how I got from there to here.
It's so fascinating to me that you can remember at such a young age, literally having a thought like, wow, man, there's got to be a better way than this. And kids are so smart. Like you just were wired that way, which I just find it so fascinating that you end up doing what, this is your dharma, what you're meant to be doing in the world. So, but why now with this book? You note that this book is an inclusive guide for couples. So what makes it inclusive, and why was writing something inclusive important, and why now with this book?
Yeah. So when I started practicing, a decade ago, there's a couple meanings to inclusive. I either had to give people tons of books to read so they could learn all of the skills, like there was the EFT book here and you could learn about how to be responsive to emotions, and then you could read about attachment, and then you could do this. And so if I wanted my couples to understand something, I was spending a lot of time explaining it in session or telling them to read 8,000 books, which nobody's going to do.
Right.
Especially when you have a couple, like getting two people to even have a date night is a lot, let alone read a ton of books. So I wanted to create a book that had all of that, all of the things that I felt like I was repeating again and again in one spot. But even more importantly, when I was recommending books, they were so heteronormative. And even the very best books out there that absolutely apply to same-sex relationships had no examples in their case conceptualizations in the book. So it would all be, Barbara and John and Elizabeth and Andrew and all of these couples, but they would never have a same-sex couple represented in their examples. And I had a couple that I was working with that I offered a book to them to read, and they came back and they said, that was really good. And I would love if this applies to us because it makes so much sense. But I realized that there were no same-sex couples used in the examples. Does this not apply? And of course it applied. It absolutely applied relationally. But it made me feel so sad. It made me feel like that's really unfair. You would even have to do the jump to decide if you're included or not. And so it was really important for me and it seems so basic, but to create a book where there's examples of people in all different types of relationships,
right,
using skills.
So incredibly important. And actually, I think you're right. Even with really good books, you don't really see that. So it is for the modern age. But why now? Liz, it's like, as therapists, we've all been seeing so much that's been going on. And did the pandemic impact what you wrote? Or were you thinking, I know you were thinking about this obviously before the pandemic, but share a little bit of that if you could.
Yeah. So this whole thing was in the works before we even had pandemic on our radar. And I started really being in the meat of it in the pandemic. And so why now initially was I felt really passionate about creating a book that people could see themselves in. That was missing. But as the pandemic was moving forward in our lives and impacting our relationships, a lot changed in what I wrote. Particularly in really talking about the stressors of them. And that was kind of in there before, but adding on the layers of how many stressors are in relationships right now that we have to navigate. We have these social stressors, we have stressors within our homes, within ourselves. And so that was something that felt really important for me to explore within the book, and also the changing dynamics of relationships. I mean, they've changed because of the ways that we navigate our lives. We are, sometimes both working from home, or you have two people working out of the home during a high stress situation, but they can't get childcare to come into their home because of COVID and all sorts of stuff. So I felt that was really important to touch on.
Oh yeah. And another thing is that relationships have changed, right? In the past, if we're looking at how roles, gender roles, so many things have changed in the past 10 to 20 years. And I feel like this is an important, what you write about in the book is important in acknowledging that, as well as the most recent changes. So as a therapist, seeing couples all the time, what effect did you see that COVID-19 or this pandemic or whatever has had on people's relationships?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I've seen two extremes. The couples that were struggling because of the fact they didn't have enough time together have improved, and I don't need to see them anymore. So I was working with a lot of couples who were coming in and they had a lot of conflict, and it was really clear that it was life stressor conflict. So, if they both didn't have a 3-hour commute every day and have to pick up the kid from daycare at 6 p.m., they'd probably be a pretty great couple, but they couldn't see that because life was as it was. And when the pandemic brought them into lockdown together, I saw those types of couples improve because they were hanging out again. They didn't have all the stress from the traffic or from the office or whatever it was. So that was an interesting change. I saw that change in my own relationship. It was like conflict almost disappeared because our conflict was about, I'm so flipping tired. It's 8 p.m. I just got in the door. And why is there trash still in the trash can?
Yep.
And my partner saying, well, I just got in the door too. And why do you think I should be the one to do it?
Yep.
That stopped happening. I've worked with other couples though, where obviously things have been harder for them. And that could be because more stress has been added to their plate and it's a lot to navigate. They could have a lot of different grief levels going on for them. Boundaries have changed. So they might not feel like they're respecting each other's needs or boundaries within the relationship. Mm-hmm. And so for those couples, conflict has increased.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I've seen a very similar thing with friends and clients where there's something about people who were sort of skating by in a way in the relationship because they only spent, an hour, if that, together a day, let's say. Yeah. Those people, when they were now stuck 24/7 with someone and really having to cooperate and negotiate and do something different, those relationships just went to shit immediately. It was like, what was holding it together was like a piece of gum and some spit and
ignoring each other. Like, okay, I spent an hour with you at 9 p.m. Now we can go to bed.
Yep, exactly. Okay. So the way that tell us a little bit about the book. So I know that in each chapter of your book, you have exercises and activities, right? Yeah. This is like build awareness, come up with action steps. So basically problem solving. So that as a couple, are people doing the book together with their partner?
They can. So the book is designed so you can read it together or you can read it individually. It'll work both ways. If you're doing it individually or with a partner, there's journaling prompts that you do by yourself, because I really believe that if you take time to kind of understand what it is that you're thinking and you're feeling and how things are related to you, that you'll be better at articulating it when you have a conversation. But if you want to do this with a partner, there are prompts for you to have conversations together. And I even help you have the conversation by telling you who should go first and all that kind of stuff, with funny little exercises. So there are, at the end of each chapter and even some of the sections called Talk About It. So you can have a conversation that helps you integrate this information into your relationship.
So incredibly helpful, because really, when you think about it, what are the things that block couples from doing this is just not having the words and feeling weird. So I love that you're super specific to be like, okay, this is who goes first. This is because we're all pretty coachable.
Yeah.
But when it's new stuff, we really want instructions like that. So you don't feel if you feel uncomfortable, it's less uncomfortable.
Totally. And it opens the door for you. Like nobody has to be the one that's bringing it up on their own, because it's just Liz making you have this conversation. You can blame it on me.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So can you give us some tips for having difficult conversations with your partner? Even, we can go from what to say or what not to say, because I feel like this is a question I get all the time. So help, would you, Elizabeth?
So there's a lot of tips for that, but some very basic are obviously pick a good time. So if people are under stress, they're not going to do well in a difficult conversation, no matter how beautifully you bring it up. So if somebody's just walked in from serious traffic, or they learned bad news, or they've been in meetings all day, and you say, hey, honey, we really need to look at the budget because we're in some debt right now. Even if you bring it up gently, it's probably not going to go well. So make sure that you're picking a good time. And a good time is when you can tell, it doesn't have to be a perfect time. It's just a good time. But there's few distractions. The other person is a little more relaxed than they might be at the end of the day or something like that. And there's enough time to have the conversation. Yep. The second thing that's really important is making sure that you do pay attention to how you approach it. If it just comes out, and sometimes it does because we feel anxious and we've been holding on to it for so long. Mm-hmm. But if you've been holding on to it for a really long time that your partner hasn't been paying attention to you, and you say, you never pay attention to me anymore, not going to go well. So you want to start gently. And John Gottman has done a ton of research on this. And first few moments of a conversation, direct where it's going to go. So if you can take breaths and calm down and start from a calm space in the first place, there's going to be a lot more latitude for you to get fiery a few minutes later if you can get that person to feel safe at first. So you might say something like, I've noticed that we haven't had a date night in a month, and I feel really sad about that. And what I need is for us to talk about what we're going to do about this, instead of, you never pay attention to me anymore, mm-hmm. which is more critical, and it's going to probably elicit some defensiveness. So mm-hmm. those are two really, really important pieces of starting that conversation.
I love that so much, to not really put the other person. It's just like somebody comes at you with blame, and all you want to do is be like, no, but what about you? But what did you do? Like it's just an automatic reaction. Harriet Lerner says, defensiveness is the arch enemy of listening,
Yeah. And people have to work on their defensiveness, but we can also work on how we bring something up to help them reduce the likelihood that they're going to get defensive. Because it's normal as a human being, if you feel like you're being unfairly accused, to start explaining yourself. Yep. The second that your partner starts explaining themselves, the message has already been lost. You guys are on a different track already.
Exactly. I love this idea that you have in the book about how to build reliability in your relationship through ritual, because I'm such a ritual lady. So would you share some more with us about that?
Sure. So we have big rituals in our lives, and we have small rituals in our lives. We have daily. So this might be thinking of a relationship. Maybe you drink coffee every morning together. Maybe mm-hmm. it's as small as the fact that you give each other a kiss every single day. And then we have big rituals, which might be like the Friday date night that you have, or what you do for Thanksgiving every year, what you do for the holidays, birthdays, anniversaries. Rituals are so important because, number one, they help you create a culture of your relationship. So mm-hmm. it's like, this is us. This is what we do in our, as Stan Tatkin calls it, like in our couple bubble. We mm-hmm. are the couple that drinks coffee together. We do our anniversary by going skiing. We. So it creates more of a we. The other thing that's really important, the other reason it's really important is because it just adds to that sense of security. Like, if you're in conflict, if you're having a tough time together, you still know tomorrow we're going to get up. It's going to be another day. We'll go drive to Dunkin' Donuts and get our coffee together. And we have a way to come back together and to connect. So rituals are just really powerful ways to be intentional with your relationship.
I love it so much. And I also think that it can be really fun creating shared rituals, and it definitely personally creates a sense of security because
Yeah.
this is what we do. I can count on these things of how you celebrate, whether it's with kids or whatever. So I love that so much.
Yeah.
Another question that I had, because this is something that comes up, and especially now that the holidays are, we're kind of full swing into the holidays, is how do you know if you're shouldering more of the mental load, and how can you tell when that's impacting you? So emotional labor or whatever it is, how, just share, please.
This one is hard. And I struggle with it too, because I am so like, I'm just like so stereotypical feminine. I take on things that nobody even asked me to take on.
Totally.
And then I'm mad about it.
Yeah, same.
I put up lights all over the house and no one even cares. And it's like, no one asked me to put lights up all over the house.
They should still care.
they should still care. So going back to your question, what I just talked about, resentment, if you are noticing yourself, even having the littlest tinge of resentment, you've probably taken on too much of the mental load, right? So if you're starting to have a reaction like, your mom's not going to be here until 4:00 now, I can't believe I'm the only one cooking, or I'm the only one doing X, Y, and Z, or whatever it is, that might be a signal you've taken on too much. But before you even get there, I would really encourage you to think about, what am I taking on? And is any of this something that is going to make me overwhelmed or exhausted on a busy day? Because we take it on days where we feel like, I'm going to get it all done. But if the day comes around and it's going to make you feel overwhelmed and exhausted, you've probably taken on a little bit too much. And the other piece of it is are there other people? And this comes back to ritual. One of the important pieces of ritual is that it's coordinated. What that means is that there's another person doing it with you, or it's not a ritual. So if you're preparing for a holiday together and there's no coordination because you're the only one doing it, then I really encourage people to think, well, who can you coordinate with? Because it's not a ritual then anyway. It's just you doing all of the stuff, hoping that, you get what you are hoping for out of it, which is usually connection. But you're not actually getting that. You're just taking it all on.
Right. And I think that there's something about sharing the burden. It really requires a shift in perspective of our own, what is our job, and how is it that we want to feel? Because a lot of times if you suffer from perfectionism, or you want it all done the way that you want it done. Yeah. You do. I mean, my mother had said to me years ago, I was complaining about some boyfriend or whatever. And she said, Tara, I didn't like the way he vacuumed. I didn't like the way he didn't know how to brown garlic. This is literally what I was complaining about. And she was like, can I say something? I said, sure. She was like, first of all, just FYI, if you need everything done your way, she's like, your father never vacuumed or browned garlic, FYI. And she's like, and if you need it done your way, you'll end up like me, doing everything alone. Yes. People will stop offering because nobody wants to be criticized, about vacuuming, right? Is there really a wrong way to vacuum, you crazy person? Probably not.
And if there is, at least it was done part of the way.
Exactly.
I had a similar, my aunt once said to me, the most important lesson she ever learned was to let her husband feed the kids the hot dogs. And I said, what do you mean by that? She said, I was working this job where I didn't get home until 9 p.m. some days. And he would feed them hot dogs and mac and cheese on those nights. And I would come in and I would have a fit about it. And I would say, why aren't you making them a meal? They're going to be so unhealthy, da, 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 da. And she said, one day it hit me. Why do I care? Let the load go. At the end of the day, they're fed, they go to bed, they feel connected to their dad. He's not asking me for help with it. He's not telling me to order the hot dogs for him. So why am I taking on more stress and more of the job? And I thought, so I always think when I'm taking on too much of the load, let him feed them the hot dogs.
It's so true. Not to mention the being critical of the other I mean, is the opposite of someone feeling appreciated, right? Like, who
Yeah.
wants to keep doing it where you're putting in the effort and the other person is like, yeah, well, fine, thanks for doing it, but you did it wrong. Right.
Right. Right. And when we think about the holidays, it's the same thing. You said something at the beginning that made me think about meaning. Like, why are you doing these things? It's because there's a meaning underneath. You want your home to feel cozy, or you want people to be together, or you want a memory, any of those things that are really important. But is all of the stuff that you're doing actually connected to creating that meaning? And if you start criticizing people for helping you, the interesting thing is that usually it does the opposite of the meaningful thing. So you were trying to create a beautiful Christmas memory, let's say, by making everything perfect. And then somebody helps you and you say, that's not how I would have cooked the turkey. And you wanted it to be meaningful through connection, but now you've pushed the person away and there isn't connection.
Yep. That's so interesting. It's literally doing the exact opposite of what you want to do. So tell us, because people are pre-ordering the book right now, where can people pre-order?
You can pre-order it anywhere that you buy books. So you can go to Amazon, Barnes and Noble, indie bookstores, wherever you like to buy your books. It is there for you to purchase it.
Okay, great. And people can find you. I know I found you on Instagram.
Yeah.
Actually, like X period of time ago. I love it. So you're Liz Listens on Instagram.
I'm Liz Listens on Instagram. I have a website where you can find all the stuff, ElizabethEarnshaw.com. So very easy to remember as long as you know my name, but it is easiest to find me on Instagram.
It is. And your stuff is so good. I have to say, I'm still totally obsessed. Okay. So you're welcome. I want to ask you one question really that I ask everyone who comes on the show. Yeah. Personally, what has been your most challenging boundary struggle and how did you overcome it, if you indeed have?
Probably the one we were just talking about. I love projects. I love connecting people. So I am a huge event planner, right? But what that means is that I take on all of the things without really making sure that I can. So I'm like, I'll make the food, I'll decorate, I'll do X, Y, and Z. And then when people back out of their own responsibilities, my biggest struggle has been that I'm usually very okay with that. I'm like, no big deal. I'll take it on, show up late. I don't care. And so something I've really tried to work on is what we were just talking about, which is why do I do that? What's the meaning for me under it? And can I, instead of letting everyone feel like I am their, I don't know, concierge for the day all of the time, can I feel comfortable letting them take on some of those roles and still feel like I'm adding value in my own way to whatever these things are. So that's a struggle for me.
Yep. Just giving up that control. And what do you think boundaries, why do you think that they're so important in relationships and in life?
I mean, I think that they're transparency, really. At the end of the day, boundaries are about us being transparent. So when I'm telling people, it's okay, don't worry. I know you promised you would bring the mashed potatoes, but I'll do it instead. When I do that, I'm not being transparent. Right. I'm not saying, ooh, I actually don't think I'm going to have time for that now. Can you figure it out? Can you order it? What can you do here? I'm being the opposite of transparent, being opaque, right? I'm covering up what I actually think and feel. And that makes it really hard for people to be successful with you, because what are they supposed to do? They're of course going to go, thanks, Liz. That's awesome. I appreciate you so much for doing that. And they're going to think that's just the way she is and she's okay with it. And so the more you have boundaries, the more people know you and the more they can be successful with you.
So good. We have been talking to Elizabeth Earnshaw. Her new book is called I Want This to Work, an inclusive guide to navigating the most difficult relationship. Oh, let me see, put it up. Relationship issues we face in the modern, it's so beautiful. The modern age. You guys can pre-order it anywhere and everywhere. All the information you need is in the show notes. Liz, I so appreciate you and your big, beautiful brain. I can't wait to finish. I started the book. It's amazing. I can't wait to finish it. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. It was so nice to talk to you today.
You too.